Christopher Vaughn, 34 years old, started his own business a few years ago in Bellevue, Washington, called Stonebridge Security. It was a private investigating service that did computer forensics as well as private investigating. He was married to 34-year-old Kimberly. Kimberly was an identical twin. Her twin sister was Jennifer Phillips. Kimberly graduated from St. Charles West High School in 1991. Kimberly loved playing volleyball. She served as a Brownie and Girl Scout leader for her daughters. She attended New Hope Presbyterian Church in St. Peter's where she was a charter member. Kimberly was very active in her children's schools and taught as a substitute teacher when needed. Kimberly wanted to work with her husband, so she began planning to get her degree in criminal justice in 2004. She then enrolled in Phoenix University where she graduated in 2007. Chris joined the Washington Association of Legal Investigators where members advised him he needed to purchase a gun for serving purposes. So he purchased a 9mm Taurus handgun. Kimberly passed the certification course, and started practicing shooting at the Seattle shooting range. However, Chris landed a job with a Chicago-based company paying a yearly salary of well over $200,000, so he closed his business, and moved his family from Seattle, Washington to Oswego, Illinois. The job forced him to constantly be traveling all over the United States and Mexico, downloading computer hard drives and mobile devices for some of the largest law firms and clients. However, this was extremely lonely for Kimberly. She became a stay-at-home mom, while her husband was away, leaving her alone with the children often. The couple had 3 children. Abigail, age 12, Cassandra, age 11, and Blake, age 8. Abigail enjoyed playing soccer. She was invited to join a select soccer league as a goalie. She was a gifted artist. She spent her free time reading fantasy stories, such as fairies, and often she would write and illustrate her own stories. She loved learning to sew and cook. She attended Thompson Middle School in Oswego, Illinois. In school she was on the track team, and in the drama club. Cassandra had a deep love for animals, especially frogs. She shared her room with 2 pet tree frogs. She begged her parents to allow her to start a dog walking and sitting business. She was known as a leader, often organizing backyard games and even put together plays in the basement for relatives. She was often called Commander Sander by her family. She attended Thompson Middle School in Oswego, Illinois where she played the clarinet in the school band. Blake had a photographic memory. He knew baseball statistics for all the baseball games, as well as the current Cardinal team. He played Little League Baseball, and was a Cub Scout. He was on the soapbox derby team and even won second-place den. Blake loved to read, and enjoyed learning new long words. He attended Old Post Elementary School in Oswego, Illinois. Kimberly was very protective of her 3 children. She would make them all take walkie-talkies when they would go out into the neighborhood to play. The children were not allowed to leave without one. The family was featured in a Sun-Times article featuring their $340,000 dream house they just purchased. The photo showed Christopher and Kimberly sitting at the kitchen table with their children behind them. In the article, Kimberly said, "We really liked the small-town atmosphere of Oswego. We also checked on the schools our 3 children would be attending and found them to be highly rated. We looked at the models, and we were very impressed." The home was located at 711 Mansfield Court at Springs Gate in Southbury, Oswego. In the early morning hours on June 14 in 2007, a gentleman on his way to work on Interstate 55, south of Joliet, Illinois, noticed a man limping away from a Ford Expedition. The man was obviously in distress. When the gentleman pulled over to assist, he noticed the man was wounded in 2 areas, the wrist and leg. The gentleman asked if he had been involved in an accident, or if he'd been stabbed. The man answered that he thinks his wife shot him. When authorities arrived at the scene, they found all 3 children in the back seat. All 3 were dead from 2 gunshot wounds. Kimberly was slumped over the center console dead in the front seat, from a single gunshot wound under the chin. Under her feet police located the 9mm handgun. Kimberly's wound just under the chin with an angle contact gunshot wound. Abigail had been shot near the right eye, and in the lower right portion of her chest. Cassandra was shot in the middle of her forehead, and also in her chest. Blake was shot in the forehead, and then in his upper left underarm, leading investigators to theorize he raised his arm in defense. The SUV appeared to be packed for a road trip. The back was packed with beach towels and a cooler. Paperback books were tucked into the seat pockets. However, what was once a family road trip turned into an ugly crime scene. The floorboards were now riddled with shell casings and glass. Blood was spattered all throughout the vehicle. A trail of blood led down the roadway to where Christopher Vaughn flagged down a passing vehicle. Numerous witnesses at the scene heard Christopher say his wife shot him, but he claimed to have no memory of what transpired. Christopher was treated at the hospital for non-threatening gunshot wounds, then released. He was brought to the police station for an interview. He was interviewed for 14 hours. He returned twice more on June 15 then again on June 17. He said he remembered his wife asking him to pull over because she felt sick. Kimberly often felt sick due to the subscription medication she was on for severe migraines. She took nortriptyline and Topamax. He told police that his family was leaving for a trip. He remembers pulling off Interstate 55, and parking in front of a cell phone tower entrance. He said he got out of the car to check on the back tires. He said he had to secure a strap on the topper which held their luggage, then got back into the car, and noticed his leg was bleeding. He claimed he had no memory of his family being shot. When police asked if Kimberly shot him, he said there was no way she could have harmed the kids. He told authorities in the interview that he first learned he'd been shot at the hospital by the doctor. He said he had no idea who shot him. He maintained his memory loss and innocence. He was arrested and charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder. The trial began in August of 2012. The prosecution wanted to push for the death penalty, but Governor Patrick Quinn signed into law a bill that abolished the death penalty while he awaited trial. Evidence came forward that Vaughn wanted to live off the grid, leave his family and live in the Canadian wilderness off the land. The prosecution used this as a motive for murder, arguing he killed his wife and children to be free to go to the Canadian wilderness. The prosecution showed where he had corresponded with someone in Ottawa, Canada about moving there and camping in the woods. The Canadian friend, Steve Wilcott, read lengthy messages aloud in court. Wilcott said the two discussed plans on an extended camping trip in British Columbia, or the Northwest Territories. One message from February of 2007, just 4 months before the murders, read, "I have been married for a long time and it was just really a few years ago I woke up and realized it was not going to work, and I did not want to be obligated to live this lifestyle until I am dead." He told Wilcott that his wife will be just fine because he was going to fake his own death, then she could collect a very large life insurance policy he had taken out on himself. He told Wilcott, maybe she will find someone who really has their mind in the game. He told Wilcott his picture-perfect day 20 years into the future would be waking up at dawn to chop wood, carrying water back from the lake, hunting and fishing off of the land, and whittling arrows in the evening. Much of their correspondence back and forth dealt with plans for an upcoming trip. Vaughn went into long details about fashioning homemade bows and arrows and packs with survival gear. He was preoccupied with every detail, questioning what he could sneak across the border, and what he could use as a cover story if he were to be questioned by the Canadian police. He discussed surviving in the cold. He described how he was having some issues with finding someone willing to tell the police a story leading them to believe he had been killed. He said he had to fake his own death or he couldn't leave with a clear conscience. Wilcott said he worried when Vaughn told him he was planning to disappear, which led up to Vaughn apologizing for telling him too much, and told his friend not to worry, that he will figure it out one way or another. Vaughn complained about his half-wasted life, saying he felt weighed down by the things he owns, his wife and his family. He said Kimberly would say something nice every once in a while, but 99% of the time she was not pleasant to be around. He said if he dropped off the face of the earth, things would go on. He said he would soon be a fading memory in their minds. He said he would be fine with that. In one email he told his friend that Henry David Thoreau's essay captured his mindset perfectly. If you are ready to leave father and mother, brother and sister, and wife and child and friend, and you never see them again. If you have paid your debts and made your will, and settled all your affairs, then you are ready for a walk and are a free man. He also mentioned he had met a girl in a strip club who had some interest in coming along on their trip, but he felt she wasn't that serious in being in the wilderness. Evidence also showed he traveled there alone in May of 2007 to Yukon. He also asked the same person he corresponded with if they would help him fake his own death so his wife could collect his life insurance money. It came forth that while in Canada he also visited strip clubs on numerous occasions. Evidence showed he spent nearly $5,000 on only 2 visits to the strip club. Prosecutors called 2 exotic dancers to testify about their interactions with Vaughn. Both stated that Vaughn wanted to leave his wife and live off the wilderness in Canada. They said he told them he wanted to be single, and not have any children. Also, Christopher Vaughn had been to the shooting range the night before the murders while his wife was home cooking dinner for neighbors who were coming over. Also, the prosecution argued that it seems rather odd that all the shots were on target except the ones directed at him. Furthermore, the only fingerprints on the gun belonged to Christopher. The defense claimed that Kimberly was the actual shooter. Robert Deal, a crime scene investigator who worked on the case, claimed the bullet's trajectory pointed to Kimberly as the shooter. However, Deal has been fired from his position as a crime scene investigator due to failing to properly investigate a previous crime scene, the Drew Peterson case. Prosecutors claim Vaughn went to the passenger side after shooting Kimberly and put the gun in her hand and fired the shots into the children from the front seat to make it appear as though she was the killer. The defense brought forth evidence that Kimberly was taking the 2 drugs Topamax and nortriptyline for migraines. A year after the murders, the FDA released a report to the public stating there was a risk of suicide in patients taking Topamax, as well as nortriptyline. It also came out that 2 weeks prior to her death, she sent an email to her doctor that she was experiencing a big personality change, and changes in her anxiety. The defense claimed that her mood and behavioral changes, mixed with her medications, may have caused suicidal and homicidal behavior. They also claimed that Christopher Vaughn suffered from dissociative amnesia brought about by witnessing a very traumatic event. Regardless of the defense's claims, Vaughn was found guilty and sentenced to 4 consecutive life sentences. He was transferred from Will County Jail in Joliet to Stateville Correctional Center, also in Joliet, the following day. Jury foreman Dan Lactate said the totality of the evidence convinced him and the other jurors that Vaughn's story didn't add up. If you watched him throughout the trial like we did, and you saw the evidence like we did, I think you'd come to the same conclusion as we did. Will County State Attorney James Glasgow said he'll spend the rest of his life staring at the cold walls of a prison cell, and then he'll meet his maker later for his real punishment. We've never had anyone kill their family execution style like this, he said. To shoot your children at close range, there's no soul in that person. When the verdict was read, he didn't move, his face didn't change. That's the mark of a psychopath. He feels nothing. No compassion, no remorse. Kimberly, Abigail, Cassandra and Blake's memorial services were held on June 22 in 2007. 9 years after his conviction, an effort was underway to free Christopher Vaughn from prison. Jed Stone recently signed on as Vaughn's lead defense attorney. He said he was looking at a number of avenues that leads to innocence. He also said they were looking into clemency from Governor J.B. Pritzker. Glasgow said Vaughn would go free when hell freezes over. We proved beyond a reasonable doubt that Vaughn shot his children in the head and chest, at point-blank range after putting a gun under the chin of his wife and pulling the trigger. Christopher now remembers the details of what happened on the fateful day. He wrote in a letter, "I pulled over and got out to give her a minute," the letter said. "When I was around the back of the truck, heading back towards my door, it sounded like the inside of the truck was exploding. I opened my door, saw the gun Kim was holding and jumped into my seat to grab it. Kim fired at me. I fell back out the door preparing to make another attempt. Kim looked at me and said, 'You will not take my kids. You killed them.' She then turned the gun on herself and fired. I got back in to check the kids. Nothing could be done. I thought to drive the truck. Kim was slumped, so I tried to buckle her. My hands shook badly. I couldn't buckle the belt. I couldn't drive the truck. I got to the road to get help." Former prosecutor who helped with the closing argument at the trial, Chris Regis, said Vaughn had 10 years to come up with this statement, which is contrary to the evidence. He went on to say that the new statement from Vaughn clearly is inconsistent with the evidence. If the door was open when the shots were fired, then why are there bullet holes in the door? He said he has dismissed numerous murder cases where the evidence clearly pointed to the defendant being innocent, but in Vaughn's case, the evidence was overwhelming. Christopher Vaughn wanted to escape into the Canadian wilderness, and live off of the land. He couldn't do that until he could rid himself of his family that was holding him back. His initial plan was to fake his own death, and let his wife collect the insurance money. When he couldn't get anyone to go along with his plan, he decided to do the unthinkable, and just murder them all, and blame his wife. He shot his wife under the chin, then coldly put 2 bullets into each of his children. He then staged the scene to appear as though she was the shooter. Some believe he is innocent, and his wife was in fact the actual killer. However, there's far more evidence pointing to him as the shooter. How is it possible that everyone in the car gets gunshot wounds to the head and chest, but he gets minor wounds that are not life-threatening? It's a shame that there are people out there that blame the victim for her own murder. It's apparent this man wanted to escape his family life and go into the woods. He's guilty as sin and should spend the rest of his life behind bars. May all the victims in this case rest in peace. That concludes this episode. Keep your eye out for the next volume, coming soon. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing. Thanks for watching.